The morning sun streamed through the small window of Daniel's one-bedroom apartment, casting a warm golden glow over the walls cluttered with his artwork. Paintings of vibrant cityscapes, soulful portraits, and abstract expressions of emotion filled every inch of the space. It was his sanctuary, a place where he could pour his heart onto the canvas. Yet, despite the beauty of his creations, Daniel felt the heavy weight of discouragement bearing down on him. He had spent years perfecting his craft, studying under renowned professors during his brief time at art school, before financial struggles forced him to drop out. Despite the setback, Daniel had never let go of his dream. He worked tirelessly, painting late into the night after grueling shifts at a local diner. His talent was undeniable, but talent alone didn't pay the bills or open the doors to high-profile galleries. Daniel stood nervously in front of the imposing facade of Gregson Art Gallery, one of the most prestigious galleries in the city. The building's sleek glass exterior and minimalist design exuded exclusivity. Daniel clutched his portfolio tightly, his hands trembling slightly. Inside were his best works, a collection of pieces he had poured his soul into. "This is it," he whispered to himself. "This could be the break I've been waiting for." As he stepped through the heavy glass doors, the cool air-conditioned interior hit him like a wave. The walls were adorned with large, dramatic paintings, each bearing the signature of a well-known artist. The receptionist, a young woman dressed impeccably in black, glanced at him with thinly veiled skepticism. Daniel couldn't ignore the way her gaze lingered on his worn sneakers and faded jacket. "Do you have an appointment?" she asked, her tone polite but distant. "No, but I was hoping to speak with Mr. Gregson. I'm an artist, and I'd like to show him my work," Daniel replied, trying to keep his voice steady. She raised an eyebrow, but picked up the phone. After a brief exchange, she nodded toward the back of the gallery. "You can go through. Mr. Gregson will see you, but he's very busy, so make it quick." Daniel nodded, muttering a quiet thank you as he walked toward the private office. His heart raced with a mix of excitement and anxiety. This was his chance to prove himself, to finally get his foot in the door. Mr. Gregson's office was just as intimidating as the rest of the gallery. The man himself, a sharp-dressed figure in his late 40s, sat behind a massive glass desk. His silver hair was perfectly styled, and his piercing blue eyes scanned Daniel with an air of disinterest. "You're an artist?" Gregson said, leaning back in his chair. His tone carried the faintest hint of a sneer. "Yes, sir," Daniel said, setting his portfolio on the desk and opening it. "I've brought some of my work. I'd love to get your feedback and maybe discuss the possibility of a collaboration or exhibition." Gregson flipped through the portfolio with deliberate slowness, barely glancing at each piece. Daniel stood there, his palms sweaty, as the seconds stretched into what felt like an eternity. Finally, Gregson closed the portfolio and let out a short, derisive laugh. "This," he said, gesturing to the portfolio. "This is what you're trying to sell? Let me give you some advice, young man. Art is about vision, about creating something that speaks to people. These are amateurish, derivative at best. No one would buy this." Daniel felt the words hit him like a physical blow. I understand it's not everyone's taste, but I've had some positive feedback. Maybe if you gave it a chance." "Stop," Gregson interrupted, holding up a hand. "Let me save you some time and embarrassment. You're not cut out for this world. My clients expect innovation, sophistication, not, whatever this is." He waved dismissively at the portfolio. "If you're smart, you'll find another line of work. Maybe stick to painting houses." Daniel's throat tightened, but he forced himself to stay composed. "Thank you for your time," he said quietly, gathering his portfolio and turning to leave. As he walked out of the office, Gregson's mocking chuckle echoed behind him. By the time Daniel stepped out onto the busy city street, the humiliation had fully set in. He clutched his portfolio tightly, as though it were a shield against the judgmental stares of passers-by. Tears stung his eyes, but he refused to let them fall. Maybe he's right, Daniel thought bitterly. Maybe I'm fooling myself. But as he walked past a street vendor selling cheap prints of famous paintings, something inside him stirred. He thought of all the nights he had spent working on his art, all the sacrifices he had made. Giving up wasn't an option, not now, not ever. "I'll show them," he whispered, his jaw tightening with determination. "I'll show them all." With renewed resolve, Daniel walked toward the subway station, his mind already racing with plans. He didn't know how or when, but he was certain of one thing: he would prove Mr. Gregson wrong, no matter what it took. The rejection from Mr. Gregson weighed heavily on Daniel, but it also fueled a fire inside him. He spent weeks refining his skills, pouring every ounce of emotion into his paintings. His small apartment became an even bigger mess, with unfinished canvases stacked against walls and splatters of paint staining the floor. He barely slept, determined to create something that would defy the words of those who doubted him. One afternoon, while wandering through the neighborhood, Daniel passed by a quaint cafe with large glass windows and a welcoming vibe. The cafe, aptly named Corner Brews, was a popular spot for locals, always bustling with patrons sipping coffee and working on their laptops. As he stood outside, he noticed a small sign near the entrance that read, "Support local artists, we display their work." A spark of hope flickered within him. Maybe this is a way to start, he thought. Gathering his courage, he stepped inside, portfolio in hand. The cafe's owner, a cheerful middle-aged woman named Linda, greeted him with a warm smile. "Welcome. What can I get for you?" Daniel hesitated for a moment before responding. "Actually, I saw your sign about supporting local artists. I was wondering if you might be interested in displaying some of my work." Linda's eyes lit up. "Oh, I'd love to see it. We've had some amazing artists showcase their work here. Let's take a look." Daniel opened his portfolio, his hands trembling slightly as he presented his pieces. Linda flipped through the pages, her expression thoughtful. Finally, she looked up with a smile. "These are incredible," she said. "You have such a unique style. I think our customers would love them. Why don't we start with 3 pieces? I'll hang them up today." Daniel could hardly believe his ears. "Really? Thank you so much. This means the world to me." Linda chuckled. "No need to thank me. It's artists like you who bring life to this place." True to her word, Linda hung up 3 of Daniel's paintings in prominent spots around the cafe. As customers came and went, Daniel sat quietly in the corner, observing their reactions. Some people stopped to admire the paintings, while others took pictures. It was the first time he had seen strangers appreciate his work, and it filled him with a sense of pride he hadn't felt in a long time. A week later, Linda called him with exciting news. "Daniel, you won't believe this," she said over the phone. "One of my regular customers, an art collector, saw your paintings and was absolutely blown away. He wants to meet you." Daniel's heart raced. "An art collector?" "Yes. His name is Mr. Stanton. He's very well connected in the art world. He said your work has a raw, emotional quality that's hard to find these days." They arranged to meet at the cafe the following day. Daniel spent the night pacing his apartment, nervous but hopeful. When he arrived at the cafe, he was greeted by a tall, distinguished man with salt and pepper hair and an air of quiet confidence. "You must be Daniel," Mr. Stanton said, extending a hand. "I've been looking forward to meeting you." "It's an honor," Daniel replied, shaking his hand. They sat down, and Mr. Stanton wasted no time getting to the point. "Your work is extraordinary. There's an authenticity to it that's rare in today's art scene. I'd like to purchase these 3 pieces, and if you have more, I'd love to see them." Daniel was stunned. "You want to buy them? All 3? Mr. Stanton smiled. "Absolutely. And I'll pay you a fair price, $5,000 for the set." Daniel nearly choked on his coffee. It was more money than he had ever made from his art, and for a moment, he wasn't sure if he had heard correctly. That's amazing. Thank you so much." Over the next few weeks, Daniel continued to sell his artwork to Mr. Stanton and other patrons who discovered his pieces at the cafe. Word began to spread, and Daniel decided to take a leap of faith by setting up an online store. He spent hours photographing his work, creating descriptions, and sharing his story on social media. Slowly but surely, his online presence grew. Followers admired not just his art but the journey he shared, the story of a struggling artist refusing to give up. People from across the country began placing orders, and for the first time, Daniel felt like his dream was within reach. One evening, as Daniel was working on a new piece, he received an email that would change everything. The subject line read, "Opportunity for mentorship, let's connect." The sender was a prominent art investor named Victoria Hayes, a woman known for discovering and supporting emerging talent. In her email, she wrote about how she had stumbled across his work online and been deeply moved by his unique style and resilience. "I believe you have the potential to make a significant impact in the art world," she wrote. "If you're open to it, I'd like to mentor you and help you navigate the next steps in your career." Daniel sat back, hardly able to process what he was reading. It felt like the universe had finally acknowledged his efforts, rewarding him for every setback and sleepless night. "Let's do this," he whispered to himself, a smile spreading across his face. For the first time in years, Daniel felt like his dream was no longer just a dream, it was becoming his reality. Under Victoria Hayes' mentorship, Daniel's world began to change in ways he never imagined. Victoria, a seasoned investor with a sharp eye for talent, took Daniel under her wing and introduced him to a network of influential figures in the art world. Unlike Mr. Gregson's dismissive attitude, Victoria treated Daniel with respect, praising his work for its raw emotional depth and originality. "Your art tells a story," Victoria said during one of their early meetings. "It's not just about technique, it's about the way it makes people feel. That's what sets you apart." Victoria helped Daniel refine his portfolio and taught him how to present his work in a way that resonated with gallery curators and collectors. She arranged for him to meet with art critics, curators, and even journalists, each interaction opening new doors. Her influence was undeniable, but she always emphasized that his talent was the true driving force behind his success. Daniel's first major breakthrough came when Victoria secured him a spot at an exclusive art exhibition in New York City. The event was a gathering of the most prominent names in the art world, and Daniel's work was displayed alongside pieces by renowned artists. His paintings, with their vivid colors and poignant themes, stood out among the rest. As guests wandered through the exhibition, Daniel watched nervously from the sidelines. He noticed people pausing in front of his paintings, their expressions changing as they absorbed the stories his art conveyed. It wasn't long before a well-dressed man approached him, a thoughtful smile on his face. "You're the artist behind these pieces, aren't you?" the man asked. "Yes, I am," Daniel replied, his voice steady despite his nerves. "I must say, your work is extraordinary," the man continued. "There's a depth to it that's rare these days. It's refreshing." The man turned out to be a prominent art critic, and the following week, Daniel's name was splashed across the pages of major art publications. Critics hailed him as a visionary and a game-changer in modern art, praising his ability to capture emotion and humanity in his work. One article described his paintings as a mirror to the soul, reflecting the struggles and triumphs of life. The recognition led to a flurry of opportunities. Invitations poured in from galleries across the globe, each eager to showcase Daniel's work. Within a year, he had exhibited in Paris, Tokyo, and London, each show drawing massive crowds and critical acclaim. His pieces, once deemed unsellable, now sold for tens of thousands of dollars each. Collectors clamored to own his work, and his name became synonymous with authenticity and innovation. Despite his growing fame and wealth, Daniel remained grounded. He still painted in his small apartment, finding comfort in the familiar space where his journey had begun. He refused to forget the struggles that had shaped him, often reflecting on the rejections and hardships that had once seemed insurmountable. To give back, Daniel began mentoring young, struggling artists, offering them the guidance and encouragement he had once desperately needed. He partnered with local organizations to host workshops and exhibitions for underrepresented artists, ensuring they had opportunities to showcase their work. One of his most memorable moments came during an exhibition in his hometown. The event was held at a newly renovated community center, and Daniel had invited several young artists to display their work alongside his. As he walked through the gallery, he overheard a teenager excitedly explaining the meaning behind her painting to a visitor. The sight filled him with a sense of pride and fulfillment. "This is what it's all about," Daniel thought. "Using what I've built to help others." As Daniel's financial situation improved, he allowed himself a few indulgences. He moved into a larger studio apartment with a breathtaking view of the city skyline and treated himself to better art supplies. But he remained humble, often donating a portion of his earnings to charitable causes and investing in programs that supported emerging artists. Despite his success, Daniel's past was never far from his mind. During interviews and public appearances, he often spoke about his journey, sharing stories of the rejection and ridicule he had faced. "Every time someone told me I wasn't good enough, it fueled me to work harder," he said during a television interview. "I want people to know that their worth isn't determined by the opinions of others. If you believe in what you're doing, keep going. Your time will come." As his fame continued to grow, so did his impact on the art world. Daniel wasn't just an artist, he was a symbol of perseverance and resilience, a living testament to the power of following one's dreams. And while the road ahead was still uncertain, Daniel knew one thing for sure: he would continue to create, to inspire, and to prove that anything was possible with hard work and determination. It had been 3 years since Daniel had stepped foot in the city where his journey had truly begun, the same city that had once crushed his spirit with rejection. Now, as he looked out from the tinted windows of the sleek car that brought him back, he marveled at how far he had come. Billboards and magazines now bore his name, galleries around the world showcased his work, and collectors vied for the chance to own a piece of his art. Yet, a part of him couldn't forget the sting of Mr. Gregson's laughter and condescension during his first attempt to enter the art world. As the car rolled past the familiar streets, Daniel spotted the imposing glass exterior of Gregson Art Gallery. It hadn't changed much, still sleek, still trying to exude an air of exclusivity, but something about it seemed less vibrant. The once bustling sidewalk outside was now empty, and the posters in the windows advertised discounts on gallery space rental. It didn't take much investigation for Daniel to learn the truth: the gallery was struggling financially, unable to keep up with changing trends in the art world. A small smile tugged at his lips. "How poetic," he thought. "The same place that told me I wasn't good enough is now fighting to survive." But Daniel wasn't one to seek petty revenge. His success had taught him to rise above the negativity of others. Still, he couldn't resist the idea of confronting Mr. Gregson, of walking back into that gallery, not as the desperate, struggling artist he once was, but as a wealthy and famous figure in the art world. He decided to visit the gallery under the guise of a potential buyer. Dressing down in simple jeans and a plain hoodie, Daniel intentionally kept his appearance unassuming. He left behind the designer clothes and carefully curated public image, opting instead to blend in. The goal wasn't to flaunt his success, but to see if Mr. Gregson had truly changed. As he stepped into the gallery, the familiar chill of the air conditioning greeted him. The walls still displayed large paintings, though this time the pieces seemed uninspired, lacking the vibrancy of years past. A middle-aged woman at the front desk glanced at him briefly before returning to her phone, her indifference a stark reminder of his first visit. Daniel wandered the gallery, pretending to admire the artwork. His sharp eye quickly noted the lack of originality in the collection: safe, commercial pieces designed to appeal to a broad audience but devoid of soul. It was clear the gallery was struggling to attract both artists and buyers. Eventually, Daniel approached the front desk. "Excuse me," he said politely. "I'd like to speak with Mr. Gregson about purchasing some pieces." The receptionist glanced up, her expression skeptical. "Do you have an appointment?" "No, but I'm interested in investing in the gallery," Daniel replied, keeping his tone casual. She hesitated, then picked up the phone and made a quick call. Moments later, Mr. Gregson emerged from his office, his expression one of forced politeness. He hadn't changed much, his silver hair was still impeccably styled, and his tailored suit gave off the air of someone desperately trying to maintain an image of success. "Yes?" Mr. Gregson said, looking Daniel up and down. His tone was curt, almost dismissive. "How can I help you?" "I'm considering purchasing some artwork," Daniel said, gesturing to the pieces on the walls. "I'm also interested in possibly investing in the gallery." Gregson's eyes narrowed slightly, clearly unimpressed. "I see. Well, as you can imagine, we're very selective about the clients we work with." "Are you familiar with the artists we represent?" "Not particularly," Daniel admitted, feigning ignorance. "I was hoping you could recommend something." Gregson sighed, his patience visibly thinning. "Look, I don't mean to be rude, but this isn't a discount store. The pieces here are exclusive, and our clients are usually, well, let's just say they have a certain level of sophistication." Daniel suppressed a smile, recognizing the same condescension that had once crushed his spirit. "I understand," he said calmly. "But I'd still like to see what's available. Perhaps there's something that would fit my collection." Gregson chuckled, a low, mocking sound. "Your collection? I see. And what kind of budget are we working with?" Daniel met his gaze, his expression unreadable. "Let's just say money isn't an issue." For a moment, Gregson seemed taken aback, but he quickly masked his surprise with a dismissive shrug. "I see. Well, feel free to look around, but I can assure you that our pieces are intended for a very particular clientele." As Daniel wandered through the gallery, Gregson followed at a distance, clearly skeptical of his intentions. It wasn't long before Daniel stopped in front of a mediocre landscape painting, its price tag a staggering $20,000. He turned to Gregson. "This one's interesting," he said. "But I'm curious, why isn't there anything by Daniel Porter here? I've heard his work is extraordinary." Gregson's face froze, and for a brief moment, a flicker of recognition crossed his features. "Daniel Porter," he repeated, his voice faltering. "Yes," Daniel said, turning to face him fully. "You might remember him. A few years ago, he came here with a portfolio. You told him his work was unsellable." Gregson's jaw tightened, and he stared at Daniel, realization dawning. "Wait, you're Daniel Porter," Daniel said, extending a hand with a smile. "It's nice to see you again." Gregson didn't take the hand. His face had turned pale, and he looked as though the ground had shifted beneath him. I didn't realize that I'd become one of the most sought-after artists in the world." Daniel finished, his tone calm but firm. "Neither did I, back then. But here we are." Gregson stammered, searching for words, but Daniel didn't wait for him to recover. "I came here today because I wanted to see if anything had changed. But it seems like the only thing that's different is the state of your gallery." With that, Daniel turned and walked toward the exit, leaving Gregson standing in stunned silence. The power of the moment wasn't in gloating, it was in knowing that he had risen above the very man who had once tried to tear him down. Daniel stood at the edge of the sidewalk outside Gregson Art Gallery, his breath steady and his heart surprisingly calm. As much as the younger version of himself would have relished the idea of confronting the man who once belittled his dreams, he had learned that true power wasn't about revenge, it was about changing the narrative. Today wasn't just about proving Mr. Gregson wrong. It was about creating something meaningful from the ashes of rejection. He stepped back inside the gallery, the faint echo of his footsteps filling the near-empty space. Mr. Gregson was still standing where Daniel had left him, his face pale and his usual confident demeanor visibly shaken. He turned abruptly when he heard Daniel approach, his expression a mix of confusion and unease. "Mr. Gregson," Daniel said, his voice calm but firm. "We need to talk." Gregson attempted a weak smile, clearly struggling to regain control of the situation. Yes, of course," he stammered. "Let me just say, what a surprise this is. I had no idea you were, well, you know." "Successful?" Daniel finished, raising an eyebrow. Yes, that, Gregson admitted, his tone shifting to one of forced admiration. I mean, I always knew you had potential. It's clear you've done exceptionally well for yourself. Well, perhaps I was too harsh back then. But you understand, don't you? This business is competitive, and I have to. Stop, Daniel interrupted, holding up a hand. His voice was firm, but not angry. Let's not rewrite history. You didn't see potential in me. You told me my work was unsellable and suggested I find another career. Those were your exact words. Gregson opened his mouth to respond, but no words came out. He shifted uncomfortably, his eyes darting toward the door as if searching for an escape. I've thought about that day a lot over the years, Daniel continued. At the time, your words almost broke me. But they also pushed me to prove you wrong. And now, here I am, an artist whose work is celebrated worldwide, whose pieces sell for millions, and whose name is recognized in every major art circle. Gregson's face twitched, the weight of Daniel's words sinking in. Millions, he repeated weakly. That's right, Daniel said, crossing his arms. And here's the ironic part, I could buy this entire gallery if I wanted to. I could own the very space that once tried to shut me out. Gregson's eyes widened, his usual confident facade crumbling completely. Now, let's not be hasty, he said, his tone shifting to one of desperation. This gallery, it's been my life's work. I've made mistakes, sure, but I've always had an eye for talent. Maybe I didn't see it in you back then, but clearly, I was wrong. And for that, I apologize. Daniel regarded him silently for a moment, his expression unreadable. Then, he spoke, his voice steady. I'm not here to gloat, Mr. Gregson. I'm here because this gallery still has potential to be more than just a business for the elite. It could become a platform for artists who, like me, were once overlooked and dismissed. Gregson blinked, his confusion evident. What are you saying? I'm saying I'm going to buy this gallery, Daniel replied. But on one condition, it will no longer cater exclusively to the wealthy and well-connected. It will become a space for underrepresented artists, a place where talent and passion matter more than status. Gregson stared at him, his mouth opening and closing as he tried to process the words. You're serious? Completely, Daniel said. And let me be clear, I'm not asking for your permission. I'm offering you a choice. Either you sell me the gallery, or you watch it crumble under the weight of its own irrelevance. Gregson's shoulders slumped, his earlier bravado completely gone. He looked around the empty gallery, as if seeing it for the first time in its current state, fading, uninspired, and struggling to stay afloat. Finally, he let out a long sigh and nodded. Fine, he said quietly. You win. Daniel didn't smile or gloat. He simply extended a hand. Good. Then let's make it official. Over the next few weeks, the transition was swift and transformative. Daniel brought in a team of creative minds to revamp the gallery, replacing the uninspired artwork with pieces from emerging and underrepresented artists. The space was redesigned to be more welcoming, with sections dedicated to different art forms and cultural influences. On opening night, the newly renamed Visionary Collective Gallery buzzed with energy. Artists from all walks of life mingled with guests, their work finally given the platform it deserved. Daniel stood near the entrance, watching as people admired the pieces on display. Gregson, now reduced to a minor administrative role, lingered at the edges of the room, his demeanor subdued. Daniel noticed him and walked over. You're welcome to stay, Daniel said. But things will be different now. Gregson nodded slowly. I see that. And I suppose I have you to thank for giving this place a second chance. Daniel shrugged. I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it for the artists who need it. Just remember that. As the night went on, Daniel couldn't help but feel a deep sense of fulfillment. The gallery was more than just a business now, it was a symbol of hope and resilience, a testament to what could be achieved when talent and determination were given the chance to shine. In the end, it wasn't about proving Mr. Gregson wrong. It was about creating something that could inspire and uplift others. And as Daniel looked around at the smiling faces of the artists and guests, he knew he had done just that. The first step in Daniel's mission to transform the gallery was to strip away the remnants of its old identity. Gone were the cold, sterile walls and pretentious decor that had once defined Gregson Art Gallery. In their place, Daniel envisioned a space that exuded warmth, creativity, and inclusivity, a place where any artist, regardless of their background, could feel welcomed and valued. Construction crews worked tirelessly under Daniel's direction. The walls were repainted with vibrant, inviting colors, and a massive mural celebrating artistic diversity was commissioned to span the gallery's entrance. Daniel personally selected local artists to create the mural, ensuring that their voices and visions were reflected in the gallery's new identity. Large windows were installed to flood the space with natural light, and a cozy corner with couches and bookshelves was added to encourage visitors to linger and engage with the art. The new gallery, now renamed the Visionary Collective, was more than just a physical space, it was a symbol of change. Daniel worked closely with a team of curators to seek out artists who had faced rejection or struggled to find opportunities. He attended small community art fairs, scoured online platforms, and even revisited the cafe where his journey had taken a pivotal turn. Each artist he approached was given the same chance he had once wished for, a platform to showcase their talent to the world. One by one, the walls of the Visionary Collective began to fill with stunning works of art. There were soulful portraits from a young single mother who had been painting in her kitchen after her kids went to bed, abstract pieces from an immigrant artist who had fled conflict in their home country, and mixed-media sculptures from an older artist who had been told he was too unconventional to succeed. Every piece told a story, and every story resonated deeply with Daniel. When the grand reopening was announced, excitement rippled through the community. Daniel's name carried weight, and the buzz around his mission to create an inclusive art space drew widespread attention. Media outlets covered the story, highlighting his journey from a struggling artist to a celebrated visionary determined to give others the opportunities he had once been denied. The gallery's opening exhibition was titled Unseen Voices, a collection of works from artists who had faced rejection and exclusion. On the night of the event, the gallery was packed with visitors, including collectors, critics, and everyday art enthusiasts. The atmosphere was electric, filled with curiosity and admiration. Daniel stood near the entrance, watching as people moved from piece to piece, their expressions ranging from awe to introspection. He saw an elderly woman wiping away tears as she read the story behind one of the paintings, and a young couple excitedly discussing which piece they wanted to buy. It was everything he had dreamed of and more. The artists, many of whom were attending their first major exhibition, were overwhelmed by the reception. They shared their stories with guests, their confidence growing with every kind word and genuine compliment. For Daniel, seeing their joy and pride was the ultimate reward. In the midst of the celebration, Daniel spotted Mr. Gregson lingering near the back of the gallery. The older man looked out of place, his usual air of authority replaced by an unfamiliar hesitancy. He was no longer the center of attention, and it was clear that he was struggling to adapt to his new role. As part of the agreement, Gregson had been retained as an administrative consultant, a position far removed from the power he once wielded. Daniel had made it clear that Gregson's role would be limited to logistics and operations, leaving the artistic direction entirely in the hands of Daniel and his team. Gregson approached Daniel cautiously, his expression a mix of discomfort and reluctant admiration. "It's impressive," he admitted, gesturing to the bustling gallery. "You've done something truly remarkable here." "Thank you," Daniel replied, his tone neutral. "This is what the gallery should have been all along, a place for real talent to shine." Gregson nodded, though his gaze dropped slightly. "I'll admit, I didn't think this was possible. I thought catering to the elite was the only way to survive in this business." "And that's the problem," Daniel said, his voice firm but not unkind. "You saw art as a commodity for the privileged few. I see it as a means of connection, a way to tell stories and share experiences. That's what people respond to, authenticity. Gregson sighed heavily. I suppose I have a lot to learn. Yes, you do, Daniel agreed. And that starts with confronting your own biases. The way you treated me and countless others wasn't just wrong, it was harmful. If you want to stay here, you'll need to do better. Gregson nodded again, his face lined with regret. I understand. I'll do my best. Over the following months, Gregson's transformation was gradual but noticeable. He attended the workshops Daniel organized, listening to the stories of struggling artists and gaining a deeper understanding of their challenges. For the first time, he began to see art not as a status symbol but as a deeply personal expression of humanity. Meanwhile, the Visionary Collective flourished. The gallery gained a reputation for promoting inclusivity and breaking stereotypes, drawing visitors from all walks of life. Its exhibitions were praised not only for their artistic quality but for the powerful narratives they conveyed. Daniel's efforts extended beyond the gallery's walls. He established scholarships for aspiring artists, funded public art projects, and launched an online platform to connect artists with buyers directly. His vision of creating a more equitable art world was no longer just a dream, it was a reality. Through it all, Daniel remained grounded. He continued to paint in his studio, finding solace in the creative process that had always been his anchor. And as he watched the Visionary Collective grow into a beacon of hope and inspiration, he knew that his legacy was more than his own success, it was the impact he had made on the lives of others. The grand reopening of the Visionary Collective marked a culmination of Daniel's journey, a moment he had dreamed of but never imagined would be so profoundly meaningful. The gallery buzzed with life, filled with laughter, admiration, and the low hum of conversation sparked by the art on display. Artists mingled with guests, sharing the deeply personal stories behind their work, while collectors and critics marveled at the authenticity and passion that radiated from each piece. Daniel stood at the center of it all, taking in the scene with a mixture of pride and humility. The walls of the gallery no longer held only his dreams, but those of countless artists who had once been overlooked, dismissed, or undervalued. The space had transformed into a living testament to resilience, creativity, and the power of second chances. As the evening wore on, Daniel found a quiet moment to step onto the gallery's newly built rooftop terrace. The crisp night air offered a welcome reprieve from the bustling event downstairs. The city skyline stretched before him, a sea of glittering lights that seemed to mirror his thoughts, scattered yet interconnected, each one contributing to the larger picture. Leaning on the terrace railing, Daniel allowed himself to reflect on his journey. He thought back to the early days of struggle, to the sleepless nights spent painting in his cramped apartment, to the sting of rejection that had nearly broken him. He remembered the way Mr. Gregson's words had echoed in his mind for years, fueling his determination to prove himself. But as he stood there now, he realized that his success wasn't just about proving people like Gregson wrong. It was about proving to himself that he was worthy, that his art mattered. And more importantly, it was about using his platform to ensure that no other artist would have to endure the same dismissal and humiliation he had faced. A soft voice interrupted his thoughts. "Excuse me, Mr. Porter?" Daniel turned to see a young woman, no older than 20, standing hesitantly a few feet away. She held a sketch pad in her hands, her fingers nervously fidgeting with the edges. "Please, call me Daniel," he said with a kind smile. "And you are?" "My name's Maya," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "I'm one of the artists in the current exhibition. I just wanted to thank you." Daniel raised an eyebrow, curious. "Thank me? For what?" "For everything," she said, stepping closer. "For creating this gallery, for giving people like me a chance. I've been painting since I was a kid, but I've never had anyone believe in me the way your team did. Seeing my work on these walls, it's a dream I didn't think would ever come true." Her voice cracked slightly as she spoke, and Daniel could see the emotion in her eyes. She held out her sketch pad, revealing a detailed pencil drawing of the gallery's interior, complete with guests admiring the art. In the corner of the drawing was a small figure that Daniel recognized as himself, standing amidst the crowd. I made this as a thank you, Maya said, her cheeks flushing with embarrassment. It's not much, but… It's beautiful, Daniel interrupted, taking the sketchpad gently from her hands. Thank you, Maya. This means more to me than you know. Maya smiled, relief washing over her face. You've inspired so many of us, Daniel. Your story reminds us that it's okay to struggle, that rejection isn't the end. You've shown us what's possible. As she spoke, Daniel felt a lump form in his throat. He had spent so much time focusing on his own struggles and triumphs that he hadn't fully grasped the ripple effect of his actions. Seeing the gratitude in Maya's eyes made it clear, his journey wasn't just about him, it was about every artist who had dared to dream despite the odds. You're going to do amazing things, Maya, Daniel said, handing the sketchpad back to her. And one day, another young artist will look at your work and feel inspired to chase their own dreams. That's how we keep this going. Maya beamed, her confidence visibly growing. Thank you, Daniel. I won't forget this. As she turned to leave, Daniel stood alone on the terrace once more, but this time, his heart felt lighter. He gazed out at the city, the lights shimmering like tiny beacons of hope. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to feel the weight of what he had accomplished, not as a burden, but as a privilege. When he returned to the gallery floor, the atmosphere was electric. Guests approached him to congratulate him on the success of the reopening, but it was the artists who truly captured his attention. Each one had a story, a journey that mirrored his own in some way. As he spoke with them, he realized that his legacy wasn't in the fame or the accolades, it was in the opportunities he had created for others to shine. The night ended with a toast. Daniel stood at the front of the gallery, raising a glass as the room fell silent. Tonight isn't about me, he began, his voice steady. It's about all of you, the artists who pour your hearts and souls into your work, the people who believe in the power of art to change lives. This gallery is for you, and it will always be for you. Together, we're building something bigger than any one person, a community that celebrates creativity, diversity, and the resilience of the human spirit. The room erupted into applause, the sound filling every corner of the gallery. As Daniel looked out at the faces before him, he felt a profound sense of fulfillment. He had come full circle, from a struggling artist desperate for a chance to a mentor and advocate for others like him. And in that moment, he knew his journey was far from over, it was only just beginning. The Visionary Collective had become more than a gallery, it was a movement, a beacon of hope for those who dared to dream. And as the night drew to a close, Daniel couldn't help but smile, knowing that the best was yet to come.